This is going to be a pretty exciting show. We've got lots of stuff to talk about. Joining me on the show today are two good friends of mine who I'll introduce in just a second. But right now, it is time for TWiP episode 509. 509 starts now. This is TWiP. All right, here we are, back for TWiP episode 509. I'm here with two of my really good friends, Mr. Robert Evans and Mr. Martin Bailey, both of which are very accomplished photographers, and they've taken time out of their day today to hang out and talk photography, light, apps, Sony stuff, and all that stuff. Hey guys, what's going on?
How are you, Fred?
I'm good. I'm good. This is an interesting milestone show for me because if the listeners have been following TWiP over the past couple of weeks, you know that I've been on this pilgrimage of live streaming, and each successive stream I do gets a little bit better. Hopefully this one will be dialed in. I'm gonna knock on wood. Hopefully this one will be dialed in. But we'll
last words.
Famous last words, and that's me tempting the fates, right? We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But let's do introductions. And let's start with Martin Bailey, man. What's going on? I haven't talked to you in like a year. What's going on? You're getting younger every time I talk to you. What's happening?
Well, I keep putting on weight to fill out the creases in my skin. That's what it is. But everything's great. I just back from my 3 winter wildlife tour, 1 winter landscape and 2 winter wildlife tours here in Japan. Busy January and February, but it's been great. 3 great tours, and very happy to sort of be back in the. It's great traveling, but you know how it is. It's always nice to get back and just start to catch up in the office again. So I'm sort of in that mode now.
Yeah, it's like when you leave. Before you leave, you want to go, but then when you go and you're there for like a week or so, you want to come back, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I do. It's 3 tours, and they're all 2 weeks each. Well, 12 days each, and I just do them almost back to back through January and February. So I don't get to be at home, and then while I'm at home, because I've got my own podcast, I'm sort of trying to get some more episodes and blog posts and podcasts in the feed ready to leave. Accounting, all of the other stuff we do, and then it's like I get to sit down and relax for about an hour before I jump in a taxi to go back out again, and it's just it's a wild January and February each year.
Well, you and I are going to sit down and do a proper catch up session. Friday, right? We're gonna sit down and go through all this stuff because it's too much to go through in one episode of TWiP. So we'll talk about all that stuff. But welcome, thanks for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Frederick. It's lovely to be back.
You're welcome. And also on the show, Mr. Robert Evans. What's going on? I've known you forever as well. What's happening? It's like a family reunion. What's going on, Robert?
Not much. How are you, Fred? It's been a long time.
I'm doing good. You still shooting weddings? You still doing that Sony thing? All that, right?
Yeah. Still getting it done.
What's that? So one of the reasons why you're on the show, obviously, is you're going to be talking about the Sony A7 III.
Yes.
So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about some of the things you've been up to in the Sony world and all that. So get ready to be grilled. So it should be fun. But before we dive into the news itself, where is that camera? Do you have the A7 III?
Well, I had it. They gave it to me about 3 weeks before that came out. They did launch at WPPI on Monday night, the first night of WPPI.
Yeah.
And I shot a little project for them. Originally, they kind of approached me and said, "Hey, do you have a wedding between these dates and these dates?" And I said, "Well, I don't. And could you second shoot?" And I was like, "Well, what do you guys want?" So finally, they told me, they said, "We're going to give you this camera, 3 weeks before it comes out. We want you to create some content." So to make a very long story short, I ultimately decided I wanted to kind of do a styled shoot instead of try to second shoot with someone, so I had a little bit more control over the content. So I came up with this idea. I have a friend here in town that has a beautiful bridal salon. I know that's kind of crazy, but the first time I went in it, I was like, oh my gosh, I want this to be my studio. It's in a warehouse. It's got the high ceilings, the polished floors, the windows. And so the idea I came up with was what I call the bridal salon elopement. Girl finds her dress and wants to get married that same day. And they asked me for 20 stills. Ultimately, that's what I needed to deliver. But then I also shot a video of the whole story as well.
Very cool. Very good. Now, what is your primary camera? What's the primary model of Sony that you shoot?
So right now, wedding wise, I have a lot of their different bodies and I use them for different reasons. But for wedding, I'm using the A9, and the A7 III will definitely be my second wedding body. Currently, I kind of was taking the A7R III.
Yeah.
But to me, it's a little bit big of a file for a wedding camera. It's an amazing camera, but that's more for my commercial projects, any landscape that I'm going to do, probably portraits. And I do also have a 6500, A6500 in my bag, kind of as like a third body. But I think with the new A7 III, the A9, those two bodies are going to be perfect. And I shoot, both of them are great for action too. I do more than just weddings, but I'm a wedding photographer with a minor in sports.
Oh, nice.
So
nice. Yeah.
I shoot a lot of sports. So I really like shooting the cameras that, have the fast frame rates. So that, of course, you can't beat the A9 at 20 frames a second. But the A7 III it's 10 frames a second, but that's mechanical shutter. So it's pretty fast.
Yeah. Well, what else? Like, what are the tentpole features? And I'm rolling some video right now, some beauty video from Sony's site that talks about it. But from your perspective, what are the tentpole features of the new Mark? I keep wanting to say Mark III. It's not a Mark III. It's just A7 III, right?
It's the A7 III. So that was the original camera that Sony released. So this is the third iteration of that camera. But basically, it's kind of the A9, but for about $2,500 less. I mean, I think it's about $2,000, or will come out at $2,000. I think it's in April. Sometimes they start shipping. You can pre-order them now, but it's really an amazing little camera for the price. The focusing system they have in it is the same system as the A9 with the 693 focusing points, with contrast and phase detection, that kind of 4D focus. So not only will it focus this way, but it focuses depth-wise on the sensor. It's really just a great little camera. And at 24 megapixels, I think it's 24.2 or 0.4 to be exact, but it's kind of the perfect size file. That's still even a little big if you ask me. I mean, in my opinion, I think probably 90% of my clients are not ordering anything bigger than 11 by 14. And that's really like because I'm making an album that big.
Yeah.
But even if somebody did order, I used to use the A7S II as my backup, and that's only 12 megapixel, and that was fine. I mean, I say backup, but sometimes second body for different things. I mean, even if somebody ordered a 30 by 40 from a 12 megapixel file, no problem.
Right.
So 24 is kind of nice because I still have a little latitude to crop in if I want. And so they really go well together, like those two bodies. But, at that price, $2,000, I mean, you really can't. It's a lot of camera for not that much of a spend.
Yeah. Sony's been crushing it. I'm still a diehard Panasonic Micro Four Thirds Lumix shooter, but I lust after different other camera brands for certain features. Right?
Yeah, I saw your friend William at WPPI. I was trying to sway him back over.
Oh, William Innes? Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, no, the gravity's strong on Planet Panasonic, man.
Well, he told me his son is shooting Sony. I was like, oh, that's trouble. You need to change.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that's always kind of the gotcha with Sony, and I literally haven't picked up a Sony camera in a year or 2 years. So hopefully you can tell me this has changed, but there was two main negative things that I know about Sony, or about the previous iterations at least, and that was the menuing system. The menu was hard to navigate, and then also the battery life.
So the menu is still the menu. I mean, I think they made it a little bit easier, but the two things, that's one thing amazing, is that Sony listens to their customers. You get a lot of feedback, even as an artisan at WPPI and many other times. Like, they have engineers that come in from Japan, and we get to sit down with them one-on-one and give them feedback. And, they look at us and feverishly write notes. And, but that's the one thing. So when the A9 came out, it has the new battery in it. I think I forget the part number, but it's PLZ 1000, I think. Lasts much longer. The A7R III now has that battery. Now the A7 III has that battery. So the A7 III, now you can get 710 shots out of one battery. I think it's probably more. And of course, if you put a vertical grip on there and you can put two in there, you know, with my A9, I put two batteries in the camera and I shoot all day and I don't have to change batteries. Okay. And just like the A9, just like the A7 III, the A7 III, they also put dual card slots.
When you say you shoot all day and you don't have to switch batteries, what does that mean? Because does it mean you're just out and about casually shooting or shooting a wedding? Because I've been on a wedding with you, and you shoot a lot on a wedding.
Just for a point of reference, I'm in a wedding about 10 hours. So from, you know, getting ready, you know, I usually start shooting about 4 hours with getting ready prior to the ceremony, and you know, it's about always a 9-10 hour day usually for me.
Wow. Okay. Martin, what about you, man? Are you on the Sony bandwagon yet? Last time we spoke this is a good question, because it was like, what was it? It was about a year ago, and you're on the fence. You're like, yeah, I like my large DSLRs, but Sony in the low light, I'm thinking about it. But have you, like, where are you now? Did you jump?
Nope. you know what? I'm still, I like, every time Sony release something, I look and I say, yeah, that's great. You know, they're doing great jobs. And as Robert just said, you know, I mean, they are, well, everyone knows Sony are really pushing the boundaries and listening to customers and stuff like that. But I'm just so happy with my Canon gear. And I don't know. I mean, I know. Am I allowed to? Well, no, I probably shouldn't say Pixel Whore, but
you just said it.
You just said it.
And that's now the title of this episode: Martin Bailey, the Pixel Whore.
Yeah. So I mean, I thoroughly understand what Robert's saying about his work. He knows his customers. He knows what he needs. Yeah. And I think that when you're in a position when you know what you want and need, it's pretty liberating. Yeah. And I'm sort of the other way. I mean, I sell, this time last year I'd licensed 5 images to Canon for their large format printer booth here in Tokyo. Well, in Yokohama there's a big show that they do each year, CP Plus, and they literally printed 2.5 meter tall strips, crops out of horizontal landscape aspect images. And so a lot of my sales, because of the sort of work I do, are very big prints. And so for me, having 50 megapixels is pretty much, it's putting food on the table and keeping a roof over my head some months. So I'm the other way. I mean, I love being able to get those huge files, and I'm making it work. You know, the slow shutter speed on the 5DSR is a little bit limiting when you're trying to nail an eagle catching a fish out of the sea and stuff like that. But I'm doing it, you know, and I'm making it work with the ISOs. And while ever I can continue to do what I'm doing, I mean, I'm shooting at 6400 and still getting great files. ISO 6400, that is. So yeah, I'm happy with my Canon stuff. I love the lenses, and I think it's going to take a lot more than you know, some of the things that I'm seeing from the other manufacturers to actually lure me away from that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Thanks for saying that, because that's a perfect segue for you know, I don't know who coined it. I think it may have been Doug Kay or someone who coined the phrase gear acquisition syndrome or gas or whatever, you know. But you know, I know it's heresy when you're talking about these camera manufacturers that their survival and stock price depends on them releasing new cameras with new features to entice new photographers and existing photographers to upgrade over time. But the dirty little secret is you can make some amazing images without the latest and greatest. So, Robert, I want to kick it over to you, man. So what do you think? Like, obviously you're a Sony artisan, right? So, you know, I understand that, you know, but at the same time, even Sony cameras from 2, 3, 4 years ago can run rings around things that were people that were doing award-winning work 20 years ago. Right. So should photographers, so here's a point. Let me put a fine point on the question. If someone's looking to jump into the Sony world, they've made the decision, you know what, Sony is where it's at. I need that, you know, low light, all this stuff. Should they be looking for the latest and greatest, like this new A7 III or something in that ilk? Or should they save a couple of dollars and get an older version of a Sony camera. What do you think?
No, I think that's definitely a good point. I mean, I have a lot of photographers ask me, of course, if they're thinking about switching to Sony or even just cameras in general. Usually my first response is, I usually default to say, you know what, if you want to invest some money in photography equipment, buy yourself a nice lens and buy yourself a used camera. Just because, logically, you go out and buy a 24 to 70 2.8, whether it's Canon, whether it's Sony, it's going to run you, $2,500 to $3,000. But if you decide in a year that you're done with it and you turn around and sell it and you kept your box and you took good care of it, you're going to probably sell it for, maybe less $500 than what you paid for it. You're going to get your money back. If you go out and you buy the brand new camera in the same scenario and spend $2,500 and you sell it a year later, you're going to get probably $1,000 or, some of them hold their value pretty well. So I usually suggest that people, buy an older camera and buy yourself a nice lens, because it's a lot of people like wanting to kind of step up their game. So I always suggest that they buy a nice piece of glass. Now, with that said, I do think the A7 III for the price, I mean, you could buy a used body for $2,000. For the price, the technology in that camera and what it does is pretty amazing. But I do absolutely agree. It's not always the camera, it's the artist. And there are things that you can do with just a basic piece of equipment. So, I guess if you were to ask me like, oh, would I suggest somebody go buy the A7 compared to the A7 III or the A7 II, I probably would say, well, at least get the 2. Because of the technology, there's basically, Sony's a sensor company, right? And the new sensors that they're putting in their camera, the back illuminated sensors, the stuff that they do, the cameras are able to do what they can do because of that sensor. So the older cameras don't have that technology in it. But even Martin was saying, like, and I kind of have always been the same way, where I grew up shooting film. I shot my first wedding in 1989, and for me to get past 3200 or 6400 ISO or ASA, as we used to call it back in the film days, it was like kind of hard. But now, with those sensors, like, I'll shoot at my weddings 10,000, 20,000 ISOs, shoot available light with the fast lens at the reception, and I shoot less and less flash at my receptions now, and I shoot just straight available light. Now, I do have a second photographer who, for cake cutting, for instance, to be safe, you shoot flash, I'm going to shoot available. But with the silent shutter on the camera and the ability to shoot with no flash, like, I can get images during toasts or ceremony that people don't even know that I'm taking the picture. So that technology is pretty amazing.
And that's where things are. And that's part of the feature discussion for this episode. Yeah, I wanted to talk about the A7, so thanks for that, A7 III. But I also want to talk about flash versus continuous light. Before we get into that, and Martin, I want to give you a chance to answer the question about, should you just jump in and get something used, or should you save more pennies and get the latest and greatest state-of-the-art, and stave off technology obsolescence as much as you can? Before we do that, Martin, before you answer that, I want to give a shout out to the folks in the chat room. What's up, chat room? Christopher Berry, the TWiP community manager, is in there holding it down. Who's in there? We've got Craig Stampley's in there. Chris Berry, of course. Frank Wise is in there. Mark Harris. Sharky James from the Petapixel Photography Podcast. It's the longest name in the world. Sharky James from the Petapixel Photography Podcast. Love it. Don Komarechka is in there. The man, the master of the snowflake, is in the house, and more. Look at all these people in there. So thanks, guys. Brian Fisher just showed up. It's a party. It is a party. So thank you, folks, for supporting us. If you guys have questions in the chat room, please go ahead and post them in there. Chris is going to help kind of collate them and get the best questions to us. Excuse me. And then later in the show, we will do a listener Q&A section, or a viewer, I guess in this case, Q&A section, and try to run through some of your questions. So if you have specific questions for Martin or for Robert about Sony stuff or whatever, wedding photography, whatever, please post them in there and we'll get to them later in the show. But before we get down to that level of the show, Martin, what do you think, man? So should people be buying used cameras and getting the best used camera they can get? and then, or should they jump right in and get the most expensive camera that's available today, just so that, you know, technology is going to keep moving anyway? What do you say?
Well, I think, I mean, it really depends on where that person is in their photography, and if it's someone that's trying to get into it, just needs something to start to, I don't know, get their feet wet, and they want something that they can control the exposure, you know, more than a point and shoot, or as great as they are, more than an iPhone. You know, if they want that, then, and they don't necessarily need the latest and greatest, then yeah, jumping in with something, an older, a secondhand camera. I think Robert's advice about, you know, most of the time your investment in your lenses is going to be the thing that really lasts, and they are great investments. So it's good advice. And then, I mean, I'd be a hypocrite if I said that, you know, I'd be happy to shoot with older gear, because although I just use two 5DSRs now. They're not the latest from Canon. We've got more. You know, the 5D Mark IV is a newer camera. I generally, until now, I've always just bought the latest thing that came out from Canon. I'm holding back with the 5DSRs simply because they're higher resolution. Mm-hmm. But the you know, the 5D Mark IV, if you don't need that resolution, is definitely a better camera. It's got much better ISO performance and stuff like that. So if you're not in a situation like me where you really do want the megapixels, then you know, that would be a better camera to go for. But by all means, I mean, if someone just wants to get into photography, it's every camera that we can buy now, every camera that we've been able to buy for the last 10 years has been better than anything that we've had over the last century. You know, yeah. So, and it's just, it really is a great time to be a photographer, and you could buy something 5 years old and still be in really good shape, have great features to do your work. But the main thing for me is, whenever I make a decision or give advice, is on any buying decision, is whether or not you feel that there are features in the newer version that are going to help you overcome an obstacle. If you don't have an obstacle to overcome, you're not, you know, feeling pain from having too low a frame rate, or the ISO performance isn't very good, and you really need to shoot in the dark, then it's, if you've got obstacles like that to overcome, then yeah, go for the latest and greatest. But if you don't, it's always going to be the photographer that makes the photograph. It's what's in here, you know, pointing to my head, and in how we see and interpret the world, that is going to be the most important thing, rather than the equipment that we're using to capture it. So yeah, I mean, I think it can go both ways. I love my new gear, but I'm also very happy with my camera's a couple of years old now, and I'll upgrade. I mean, don't get me wrong. When Canon bring out they've had prototypes of 120 megapixel cameras, that, you know, the 5DS R Mark II or whatever. And this is not insider information, just me guessing on what I'm seeing online and that. But you know, when it comes out, and it is probably 120 or so megapixels, crazy talk, but I'll jump on it because, you know, like I say, I'm a pixel whatever. So
yeah, don't clean it up now. You know what you are.
So I think that there's for me, as long as I can still get a relatively good. I mean, I was shooting in Morocco last year. And Namibia. I was shooting inside unlit buildings and facilities. We had one guy down a well in an irrigation canal with just a tiny circle of light coming from above. I shot that at ISO 6400. The image is great. There's hardly any noise in it and everything. Wow. So if you know how to control the exposure to help the camera, i.e., in my case, you know, using the technique they call exposing to the right, just making sure you've got the detail, all of the light on the histogram is over to the right side, even in dark conditions, and even if it means increasing the ISO, then generally you can still get great images, even out of a very small pixel pitch camera like the 5DSR.
Yeah, isn't it? It always seems like there's a. I don't know what's the best way to put it without offending everybody. So it's like for me. Let me put it in the context of Frederick. So there's a line between want and need, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So these camera manufacturers are and their marketing departments are brilliant at their marketing materials and the beautiful websites and the camera fly around videos, and you watch one of these videos and you're like, of course I need that, right? What are you talking about? Like, there's no question, right?
Yeah.
I need that. But that's the want in us. The need is the lowest common denominator. And when people ask me, like, we all get the question almost daily, right? What camera should I buy? Everyone always asks us that question. And it's always, how much money do you have, right? What are you going to shoot and how much money do you have? And that should dictate what camera. It should be a pretty simple formula. But where do you draw the line between want and need? Like, I don't think there's I think they're inextricable. I think, you want, because we're humans, right? And part of our enjoyment is wanting the new piece of kit, the marketing. And I think that's part of the secret of marketing in technology companies. Marketing is just helping you convince yourself of what you already want, right? So you see, you want the new Sony, and they just give you the extra kick over the edge. So how do you push yourself? And Robert, I'll throw this to you. How do you push yourself more towards being more weighted on the art side of it versus the gear acquisition side of things?
Well, one thing I want to say before I answer that question, and you're going to have to ask me again because I'm going to forget it, is whether you are thinking about switching camera manufacturers, like you're jumping from one brand to the other, or you just want the newer camera because your camera is 4 years old. I think the one thing, and it's so easy in today's world, is just rent. Rent the body, rent the camera, get that lens before you try it. Like, it's pretty inexpensive. You can rent them for a week. You go online, it shows up at your doorstep, you shoot it, you put it back in a box, send it back. It's really, really easy. So that is also my answer to a lot of people that say, well, should I get this or the new camera, or want to try Sony? I'm like, well, just try it. Like, rent it and actually put it in your hands, touch it, feel it, hold it for a week, use it, and see if it does what you need. Because that's a very safe way to not go buy something that you don't need.
Yeah, especially something as personal as a camera, right? Because you're going to be with this camera for a while. You got to make sure not only the ergonomics fit you, but the menuing system fits you and all these other things, and it does what you expect it to do. If you're just buying a camera to get pictures of your family or child or whatever, you could probably get by with an iPhone or an Android, a late model Android phone. But if you have aspirations to move in the direction of a Robert Evans or a Martin Bailey, then you probably want to buy something that's going to let you move in that direction more than just a cell phone camera.
I mean, I think that this answers your question, hopefully. Like, you don't, Sony has many different bodies, right? I'm just speaking Sony because I know Sony.
Yeah.
And those bodies are for different, I mean, you can use them for different things. But my point is, if you don't need 20 frames a second because you don't shoot sports, you don't need to go buy an A9 because it's the top of the line Sony camera at the current moment. If you're just shooting, macro images and a little bit of your kids around the yard, and you could go spend less. Like, you could get that used body like we talked about, or if you have to buy the brand new thing, buy the $2,000 body, not the $4,500 body. So that's why I think the art, you're saying like the technology or the art, there's always an art to photography, no matter what camera you have in your hand. And I think, again, going back to, it's just how you use it and how you convey it. But I mean, if you need to shoot, I kind of am thinking of I guess you don't really need that, but I'm thinking of that Olympic image where it showed the guy come down the ski slope and they composited together. So you see like the whole up and down, up and down, up and down. Maybe that guy really needed to shoot that fast. And so he needed the 20 frames a second. And you couldn't have that art that he wanted to create afterwards because the technology didn't reach. But in most cases, that's not the case. I mean, I think with any camera, there's a ton of people still shooting film or starting to shoot film because it's new to them. And, there's beautiful images that come from film, and, I kind of miss it, but, in today's world, it doesn't make sense in what I do and in my workflow.
Yeah. I don't miss film. Sorry. I just going to go on the record right now. I've shot enough film in my life that I don't miss it anymore. I don't miss processing it. I don't miss shooting it.
Well, all that, but like the qualities of film.
Yeah.
I honestly feel like, I mean, and you can attest to this, Frederick. don't you think, like, especially everyone today that's picked up a digital camera that's never shot film should have the experience of watching a print come up in a tray in a darkroom?
I do. But when I think that, I think I start feeling old, and I feel like that should be prefaced with "in my day," right? In my day, we bulk loaded our film and processed it and printed it, and they liked it.
There is something magical about being in a room with red lights and watching a print come up in a tray and some chemicals. And
yeah, we'll try doing that every day for
Right.
a year from sun up to
I
sundown.
agree. I had my own dark room when I was young, but I processed everything at school because I was too lazy to mix the chemicals because I didn't want to do it.
Yeah, yeah. I just remember seeing a pile of work orders because we had our work orders in these bags with film in them, and they would tell you, okay, make this many prints of this and all that stuff, and you'd literally be there. Oh my god, I got to print all this stuff, and it was military stuff, so it was like all the same. You're like, oh man,
Right.
it still had to be perfect, but it was excruciating. So I don't miss film. I love digital. All right, guys, let's jump into the feature discussion, and that's all related, right? And that's why I titled this Changing the Speed of Light, and that's flash or continuous light. And now, especially considering the new hardware that we have, like on Sony cameras, on Panasonics, on Fuji's, these cameras, the sensors are getting better and better, and it's only 2018, right? They're getting better and better. What is it going to be like in 2025? But, you look at these, where does flash fit in? And I say that from a position of purposeful naivete, right? Because I know you need artificial light to do certain things, of course. But is our reliance on flash, or the necessity of flash, like, is it gone from here, like back to that film days? It was like this in the film days. If it's after 4 p.m., you better bring your flash with you because you're not getting any shots. And now fast forward today, Martin's taking photos underground of black moles in the dark and getting good images. I don't know. Either one of you guys jump in.
Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, I don't use flash in the field at all anymore. I still have a big power pack for I use Profoto studio lights, and I have on occasion taken a great big battery, like a bat pack, I think they used to call it, the battery pack, bat pack, and charge it up, take it out, and I could use huge soft boxes and my Profoto gear in the field. I haven't taken that out in years. And I'm just finding that more and more, just deftly control of the exposure. And even if if I was doing model work and stuff like that a lot, or I was doing portraiture in the field more, then I'd probably still be using it with probably not a speed light, more so my studio flashes that I literally took out into the field. But I don't do that sort of work very much myself anymore. And I sometimes see, like for example, at the Snow Monkeys, I've just come back from my last 2 wildlife trips. In the first 3 days of each of those, we go to the Snow Monkeys in Nagano here in Japan. And, I see people with flash, and they, unfortunately, well, I'm probably not fair to say unfortunately, there was one photo that won one of the big, very prestigious competitions a few years ago, and it was a snow monkey that they'd used fill flash on, and I personally just think it looks false. It for me, it doesn't look great on wildlife, and unless you've got a situation literally where you are trying to photograph something in the dark and you need to set it up, so that you light everything, I just think that ambient light and your just light bouncing off of snowy canyon walls and things is often the most beautiful that I personally can work in. Yeah. And I will literally, like I've said, I will crank the ISO up rather than trying to light things these days. In the studio, it's a different story. I mean, I do still use my Profoto lights if I need to photograph anything in the studio or people. And I have also, a few years ago, I bought some, I think they were from LED Go, some continuous LED lights. I've probably, I bought the Daylight LED panel 600, 2 of them, a couple of years ago. And I bought these more because I was going to be doing some video work where I wanted constant lighting for the video. But I actually found myself using them for just modeling lights and for actually photographing things in the studio as well. And as long as you're careful about getting something that is either daylight balanced or relatively good quality so that you don't get some weird color casts, I think that, you know, continuous LED lights can also be used for still photography as well. So I think I'm using a gamut of stuff, including ambient light, professional sort of studio lighting, and continuous LED lighting.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because the word photographer, right, means recorder of light. It doesn't mean recorder of artificial or recorder of natural. It's just your job is to record photons and show them to other people somehow, right? So Robert Evans, I want you to tackle this as well. So I'll form the question slightly differently for you. So with we have these tools to capture pretty much any scene that we want. And we know that our reliance on artificial light, flash, or continuous, or whatever is going away. Or not, I wouldn't say going away, but it's diminishing. Our reliance on tools in order to get an image, a saleable image or a usable image, the odds of getting that are much better now with these new tools. So where in your world do strobe fit in? In speaking to the wedding photography side of your brain, is strobe specifically, do you use that for a creative effect now? Or do you still use it in situations where you just want to make sure you have a properly exposed image?
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking the whole time that we've been talking, with all the choices, LED light, strobe, on camera flash, natural. I think that's kind of going back to your last question. It's like artistic quality, right? It's a quality of light. It's like what resonates with the photographer, what he or she wants to convey in the image that they're trying to capture. But so I think it's a personal choice, just like the brand of camera that you shoot and all of the other things that as photographers that we choose. I think strobe and flash scares a lot of new photographers. And so it's easier for them to either use LED or shoot natural or available light. And I think it's good, I would encourage you to just challenge yourself and learn that. One of the things that's kind of along the same lines that I think back in my own career is, I started off shooting a Hasselblad and using a light meter. And of course I had to meter everything and make sure it was exposed correctly. And there's a big, in the beginning of your career and you're nervous about like, oh my gosh, is this exposed right? And am I doing that? And, you had to turn the film in and hope that it looked good when it came back and all those things that, nobody experiences right now. But once I was comfortable doing that, and I almost equate it to like riding a bike. Like once you learn how to ride the bike, well, then you can take your hands off the steering wheel and try that, right? You can get back on the bike, you can do it every time. And once I learned the technical side of photography, and I was very comfortable with it, it opened up a whole new world for me because I was free to see more of what was in front of me.
Yeah.
I started to become a better photographer, and I know kind of the exact point about when that happened in my career. And I was able to see more emotion and capture more things and be part of the moment. So going back to your question, as far as like artificial light, LED light on the wedding day, as I mentioned earlier, I'm using less and less flash at my receptions. And of course, during my ceremonies, if I'm inside a church, have to with a nice fast lens, even a 2.8 or even wider, I can capture amazing imagery. The camera on silent allows me to be in places and situations where people don't even know I'm taking their photo. Toasts, even forget the ceremony, like toast at a reception, I'm shutting my flash off. I'm shooting with a long lens, whether it's a 70-200 or an 85, shooting it wide open and no sound, and I'm catching reactions and people in the audience and things that are absolutely amazing. And if I were shooting flash, it wouldn't be the same quality. And the other thing, Martin said something that made me think of the same thing as far as like quality of light. I like not shooting flash at weddings because I'm shooting it as the guests are seeing it and people remember it that way, especially at a reception. You know, there's beautiful lighting, candles, up lights, whatever it is that they have. I'm photographing it the way they're remembering seeing it. But again, going back to like having a second shooter and we're shooting cake, you know, I'll let you shoot flash, you shoot the safe pictures, and I'm going to shoot the available light. And now my client has a choice of two, you know, two looks. And so, yeah, I may shoot a client like, oh, aren't these pictures beautiful? And they're like, well, they're not flash. I mean, they may not say that, but they can recognize the quality of the light is different than what they're used to seeing. Yeah. So I like giving them the opportunity for both, but I really like the ability to not have to use the flash 90% of the time if I don't want to.
I love that. I love that. And Robert, move a little bit closer to your microphone there too, because
sorry,
getting a little echo.
I was standing up because I was sick of leaning over.
You're getting excited. I know. I see. I guess. No, that's good. And I think that's what we were. I mean, that was the holy grail back in the day, right? Of I wish I didn't have to bring this flash along, but I need to bring this flash. I had what was it? On my Nikon F3, I had a sun pack. You guys remember the sun pack?
Yeah.
It looked like Thor's hammer. And it was like literally.
Well, I had a Nets on my Hasselblad.
Same kind of thing.
That was Thor's sledgehammer.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember you had to charge that thing up. We had a little Merce that was a battery pack that you'd plug it into so you could shoot all day with it. And yeah, it was crazy. But I don't know. You know, I think that in the end, all these things are creative tools. But I think it's naive of us to think that, yeah, we have all these creative tools and we can do all this cool stuff. But it's naive to think that, you know, part of us want the stuff to play with, right? So, I mean, I have strobes here for my Panasonic cameras that I don't necessarily need them, but I like to have them to do cool things. And I'll tell you who put me on that tangent. I blame you guys may have heard of this guy, Joe McNally. Have you heard of him? This is back when I was shooting Nikon. Joe McNally, I remember he did this tutorial or something. I forget, maybe it was a book, but he was talking about I think wireless on these strobes had just come out. It was an SB24 or something. But I remember him saying, "Oh yeah, you can connect umpteen of these things together and light this little corner and do that." And I remember thinking, "Oh my God, I need that in my life. I want to be able." And I remember getting on Amazon and buying all the clips that Joe had, because you connect it and you could clamp your lights anywhere and then control them from the back of the camera, all that. And I used that. I think at one point I had 4 or 5 various SB strobes, and I did something Joe McNally-esque maybe one time, and that was it. Literally one time, and those flashes just kind of sat there. I don't know if it was because cameras got better over time and I didn't need them, or I was on some wild tangent. I don't know.
You had a little gas, as you said before.
I had gas.
Gear acquisition syndrome.
I did. I had gear acquisition syndrome. Like I had been, eating cheese as a lactose intolerant person.
I think the gas stuff. Look, from where I've sort of watched people over the last few years, I think a lot of it. I mean, I know that I don't want this to sound wrong because I know that you've been a photographer for many years, Frederick, and I'm not saying that necessarily you did this, but I think that there are times as we grow as photographers when we feel that we're lacking in something. We have to try and fill those gaps by buying the stuff that people that we aspire to be or we have an affinity with. We sort of latch in on what they're using. We watch those tutorials and we think, if I'm gonna ever photograph like Joe McNally, I need all of that stuff. And then you run out and buy it. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons that I'm so happy with the gear that I'm using at the moment, I think, is because I'm really at a very comfortable place. I know that we all grow. We continue to have to study, and we're forever students. But I feel as though I'm at a place in my photography where I don't have to run out and buy the next best thing to make me better. Yeah. And I think being content where you are in your photography, and knowing that the thing that I need more than anything right now is to just continue to get out there and experience the world and try to capture it as creatively as possible.
Yeah.
And for me, that's the biggest hurdle, just getting out, breaking away from the office and getting into the field and just being a photographer. And I think that I can draw parallels. I've got, you probably, if you're looking on the video, you might be able to see a bunch of like music stuff behind me, keyboards and things. I'm currently in a very unconfident or inconfident place as far as making computer music's concerned. And so I'm now, whereas with my photography, I'm happy, I'm content. Every time I get an email from someone trying to sell me a new synthesizer plugin, I'm like, oh, I probably need this. And I'm sort of, and I'm running in and I'm buying. I mean, I managed to not buy one thing yesterday. And I think I managed to not buy one thing a few weeks ago, but I had an email at the end of last year from one of the synthesizer plugin companies that I've been using, saying you are within our top 100 people. We made more money from you than anyone else last year. You were in this top 100, and because of that, we're going to give you this nice big discount. And they threw a load of money at me to go and buy some more stuff from them, free. It wasn't so much marketing; it was a thank you. Yeah. But I thought to myself, Jesus, you've spent way too much money on synthesizer plugins, and it's because I'm not as confident. I'm just really getting started in that. It's a passionate hobby that I'm doing while I'm not out with the camera, but I think the fact that we become confident and content and know our stuff is really a big part of being able to just sit back and say, okay, so I don't need the next best thing. It's, to get better, all I need to do is to just keep doing it.
Is that part of the learning and growing process though? Because it sounds like it's like if you're learning this stuff, the patterns that I've seen over the years has been you get excited about photography. Somebody tells you that you're good and your head gets a little bigger and you do more photography. And then you see someone, you start seeing the kind of photography that you like, where there's Martin and your, wildlife and landscape stuff, or, hey, I want to shoot weddings like Robert and portraits like Robert Evans. Yeah. And they start studying Robert Evans. Oh, Robert Evans shoots Sony. I got to shoot Sony. So they go buy everything that Robert Evans has in hopes of being like Robert Evans, kind of like you, Martin, and the synthesizers. Are you modeling yourself after a musician? Like, oh, hey, look, there's Moby, and I want to be like Moby, so I got to get everything Moby has. Is it like that?
I don't, not really. I'm just trying to make stuff myself, just from myself. But I definitely think that what you just said, it is part of the learning phase, and I think that we have to go through that. But I also think that in hindsight, most of the time we can turn around and look back at ourselves 2-3 years ago and say, I didn't need half of that stuff.
Oh my God, trust me. Yeah,
and it's definitely something that we probably need to go through. But I think if we're think things through a little bit more, I mean, it's much more. I'm going to learn how to, or I have been learning how to make music on the computer by just getting one plugin and really, really learning it deeply. Yeah. And the other stuff that I've impulse bought, I implement them. I put them into music that I'm doing, but I'm becoming the better at doing that just by taking one thing and really, really learning it. Yeah. And I think that that's what we need to do with it. That's what I have done over the years with my cameras and with photography. Just master things. Take something and really, really work with it and become a master of that piece of kit or that technique. And then you're in a position then to move on and figure out what else you need. I think, coming back to what I said earlier, unless you have an obstacle to overcome, then you don't really need to buy the next thing. But you have to continue to really push yourself, both creatively and technically, until you reach those obstacles. And that really comes from just doing it and learning and really trying to master your craft.
I think the obstacle is as you're learning. And there's the modalities or modes of learning for different people. So different people learn different ways. Some people learn better in a classroom environment. Some people learn better through books or videos or whatever. For me personally, the way that I've found over the years that I learn the best is working from the end. So getting a photography magazine or getting on 500 pics or whatever and looking at images that inspire me and then trying to do that. Not to, make a saleable image or whatever, but just saying, wow, look at that compositing job. I wish I knew how to do masking like that, and then try to do it. And like you're saying, hit your head against the wall and then move forward from that. Robert, what's you're in the education industry and you've done a lot of stuff in the education space. What advice would you give to photographers out there that are like, you know what, I want to get into this, but I hear you guys, gas acquisition syndrome or gear acquisition syndrome is a thing and I don't want to get it. What should they do? What are the best steps for them to learn but not go broke?
Well, I think the advice that you both have given is really good. Like mastering it. I mean, I thought so many things when Martin said, master one thing. For me, that's like one of the things I think I really love about photography, right? Is like I could be, and I'm not saying that I am, but I could be the best wedding photographer in the world, but it doesn't mean that I'm the best astrophotographer. It doesn't mean that I'm the best fashion photographer. Totally. So it's such a vast industry that we can't really master it. So I think I'm good at a lot of things, but I'm not, at the top of my game. So I think that's kind of fun because there's always that challenge of like, okay, well now I'm going to be a good fashion photographer, whatever it is that I decide that I want to do. Another thought that I had while you guys were talking is the funny thing about, acquiring gear. And we were talking originally about like shooting flash. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still do shoot flash at my receptions, but I'm shooting less and less of it. But when we were saying that, like the one thing is like, don't get rid of that gear because remember what's old is new. And you might be like not shooting flash for 2-3 years. And all of a sudden you decide like, I'm going to go back to shooting flash again,
right?
And then you have to reacquire all that stuff. Yeah. So I think we go through, we ebb and flow and we go through those pits and valleys and it's fun to try new things. But I mean, as far as, new people and acquiring the gear, and I think I still would like to go back to what I said originally is, make sure you master your technical, if nothing else, understand your exposure triangle, ISO, aperture, and shutter speed, and know how to manipulate that camera to do whatever you want and shoot it in manual without all the bells and whistles if you don't want to. Know how to, what your lenses will do and those choices to make the best shot for whatever application that you're shooting. I think that's probably, again, one of the best things that you can do is just really understand your technical, again, so that you are free to see what's right in front of you that you are missing because you're so worried about your gear.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we'll leave this segment. We'll move into the live chat and listener questions in a second. But I want to leave this segment with a quote from Tony Robbins, who you guys may have heard of. Self-help motivational guru guy. He has a quote. The only quote that I remember from him is this one. He says, repetition is the mother of skill. That is brilliant, right? So pretty much anything. Like I think I'm a skilled podcaster now because we've done 500 plus episodes, as of you, Martin. Right? So you're probably at 2,000 now or something, right? So, but it's the, doing something, anything over and over and over again, whether it be live streaming, taking photos, practicing a specific type of photography, astrophotography, portraits, whatever, macro. If you do it enough, you start seeing what works and what doesn't work, and you build up that mind muscle, to do it over and over again. And one of the definitions of a professional, aside from being paid for something, is the fact that you can, or the idea that you can create repeatable results, right? That's a pro. So if someone hires you for a wedding and you're like, oh, I did one of these weddings I did a couple of years ago came out really good, but every now and then I have a bad wedding. The only ones I hire you. But if you're a Robert Evans and you're like, every single wedding I do, I nail it and I'm worth every penny that you pay me, you're a pro. And the only way you can get to that level, the Robert Evans level, is repetition. right? Robert, you've been shooting. You and I are around the same age, right? You've been shooting since.
No, we have the same birthdays.
You're right, right. So we both have been shooting since dinosaurs roamed the earth, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think we determined that I'm 2 hours older than you.
Yeah, something like that.
At one point.
Yeah, so you're the old man in the crew. So,
so if you want to know how old Frederick is, we just had really big birthdays.
We did. We had gigantic birthdays. If you can guess, if you're a member, I tell you what, here you go. How is this for promotional stuff? If you can guess Robert Evans and Frederick Van Johnson's age, and you're a member of TWiP Pro, put it in the general chat section, and we'll give you a free copy of Martin software, which we're going to talk about in a couple minutes. How about that? So let's segue into that, because we're almost out of time. It's at the top of the hour already. Jeez, these shows go fast. Martin, I want to talk about this app that you have out. It's called the Photographer's Friend. What's that all about?
Yeah, so I had an app that someone made me, it was a 50-50 profit split. I think some 8 years ago, a guy contacted me about the podcast, and he made me this app, and it was great. But then iOS 11 came along, and it was going to be 64-bit. And so the old app was going to be basically, it became unusable. And I was going to see people complaining because they just bought it and it didn't work anymore. So I decided to just teach myself how to develop for iOS, and did online course for a couple of weeks, and then just rebuilt it from scratch.
Are you kidding me? Really? You're like, I don't like this. That's like saying, I don't like the way my car drives. I'm going to learn how to build cars and make my own. Right?
Well, I mean, like a MacGyver photographer. He does music. He builds apps.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and this is part of something that Frederick and I are going to be talking about. But I do believe that, if the value of the photograph, and this is wedding photographers and people that photograph things that happen once in a lifetime, and you have to be there. You guys aside, a lot of the time, nature and wildlife and sort of the sort of photography that anyone can do if you're in the place, the value in that stuff is really dropping out, and stock sales are getting less and less each month. And so, I think to remain viable and to keep a roof over our heads, a lot of the time we need to do a lot of different things now. I do. So I'm just sort of basically developing a new passive income stream with this. Luckily, I've got a computer background. I went to college for some of this stuff. But it wasn't too difficult for me. It took me 2 weeks and then another month or so of just sort of studying how to do the exact things that I was trying to do. But, the long and short of it is I basically built a version 2 of my app, renamed it to Photographer's Friend, dropped a few things that I never really thought worked brilliantly in the old app. But now it's got 2 really powerful calculators in there, a depth of field calculator and an ND filter calculator. And so they work really intuitively. I know that it's sort of, I shouldn't necessarily blow my own horn or whatever, but I really put a lot of time into how they work and how intuitive they are to work. And they're sort of like a camera in that you select the settings with dials pretty easily. You can use it with one hand if you're in the field, so you can do most of the settings just with your finger, with your thumb while you hold the phone. I did an update. I got all crazy on the math. I was terrible at math at school, but I went a bit crazy on the math, and I figured out how to calculate the size of the pixel pitch from the sensor format and the megapixels. And I implemented what I call the pixel peeper mode, which takes in the depth of field calculator. Normally we base the depth of field calculations off holding an 8x10 print at arm's length. But when you're trying to look at something at 100% on a computer screen, you can see that the depth of field is actually not as deep as you might have thought it was going to be from an old traditional calculation. Mm-hmm. So I figured out how to do all of this based on the pixel pitch from the sensor size. And now the pixel peeper mode, if you turn it on, it actually helps you to find out how you need to set up your hyperfocal distance for viewing and evaluating your image at 100% on the computer screen. And that I also, as an extension of that, I figured out how to calculate the diffraction. And so now there's diffraction warnings. You can, the dials go yellow if you've got a little bit perhaps coming in. And that all comes from this. It sounds stupid, but I figured out how to calculate the size of the circle of confusion. And from that, the airy disk. And then all of this stuff told, it really, it gets a bit geeky. I spoke with Don about this as well, Don Komarechka, if you're still in here. Yeah. But yeah, it gets really geeky, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but turns out that it's been a relatively useful app for a lot of people. I've got some great reviews, all 5-star reviews in iTunes, in the App Store, sorry. And yeah, it's going pretty well. The ND calculator is really, really intuitive as well. Just type in, select your shutter speed that you've got your camera set without an ND filter, and then just tap the ND filters that you have. You can hide the ones you don't need, and it just spits out a new shutter speed for you, up to 35 years. So
35-year shutter speed.
Yeah. So you can actually, and this is more the educational side, but you can actually stack so many filters that it goes to 35 years. And it's really just to show the effects. A lot of it, I think, with depth of field and with ND, people use them to explain the techniques and explain the technology as much as they use them for actual sort of day-to-day use in their own photography. So, and then you can actually start a timer and close the app if you want to, and it'll still let you know when you've got to stop your exposure. But a whole bunch of stuff. I just built it all in there. I'm pretty proud of it, and I'm happy that I'm able now to sort of just go away and add new features myself. Someone recently, before I went off on one of my tours, they emailed and said, can you, any chance of having the 1-inch sensor size as the format? So I said, I'll try and find time to do that, maybe after I get back. And then I got the email at 10 p.m. and by 1 a.m. I was submitting a new build with the new sensor size in there.
I would like to know how you perfected the art of time travel, because seriously, music, photography, app development, leading workshops, and you're married. Like, where does the time in a 24-hour span come from to do all this?
I actually didn't figure out time travel yet, but I'm pretty good at cloning. I've got 3 other Martins downstairs working on this stuff.
There you go. I think lots of photographers that I know do that same thing. Right,
exactly.
Don Komarechka says he's still in the chat. He's still listening. So cool. Awesome.
Cool. Hey, Don.
Let's dive into some listener questions and get these in here before we forget. Thanks, Chris Berry, for collating these into TWiP Pro for me. And let's see. First one is from, and let me see if I can switch this over here so we can take a look live while I'm doing it. All right, look at that. Okay, so the first question is from Sharky James from the Petapixel Photography podcast. He says his question is, are we going to see Sony bodies creep up in size to better balance the lenses, which are quite large? Robert Evans, what do you think?
I have no intel.
No insider input? Come on, man. What's going on?
I don't know the answer to that. If he wants a bigger body, he can go shoot A-mount cameras. The A99 II is amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's balanced, and it depends on what you're shooting too, right? So
right.
On
I think that's part of the charm.
Do you have battery grips as well that you could put them on? I mean, Sharky's a pretty big guy. Maybe sticking a battery grip on the bottom will help to give something for his.
Yeah, I mean, I put vertical grips on most of my cameras. I mean, I don't have huge hands, but I'm a guy, and I just like having that little bit more of camera to hold on to. Yeah. And it really doesn't add that much more weight to it. You can put a second battery in it, so you can use battery power. So it's nice.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Next question is from EC Lundberg. He says, he or she says, anyone have experience with the Sony 24-105? Who has a Sony on the show?
I do not own that lens. I think that is a fairly new product. I don't know how long that one's been out, but I don't have. I have an 18 to 105 f4, I think. I don't use it that much. But the 24-105, I believe, is a fairly new lens, probably why she's asking the question. I've heard good things about it, but I can't speak to it because I haven't shot it yet.
Okay. All right, here's a really good question from Darren Goldstein. He says, I'm currently shooting Fuji X-T2 and 5D Mark III. I find sometimes the Fuji doesn't have the tonal range as my 5D and high ISO. I assume it's because mirrorless versus SLR. Something about the look. Where does Sony fall? That's a subjective question because, you know, there's the Fuji look that we've seen. I've heard about the Leica look. There's these different looks that different camera bodies or lens combinations generate. I don't know. I mean, you want to take a crack at that?
Yeah,
can I
go
jump
ahead,
in and just
Either one of you guys, go for it.
I mean so Darren is asking about this. This is about in high ISO, and when you use high ISOs, the pixel pitch does start to have, it will punish you a little bit more. If it's a micro 4/3, then you will probably find that the higher ISOs don't give you quite as good performance as a full frame camera like the 5D Mark III, which is the camera that is comparing it to. So you're probably just hitting the limits of what your ISO can do on the Fuji. I don't have any experience with it though, so if someone does, that might be useful. But I would imagine with it being a smaller sensor, you're certainly gonna find the higher ISOs punish you a little bit more.
Yeah. All right, next question is from Craig Stampley of Stampley Photography down under. He says, is the A7 III going to push Canon and Nikon to change their direction and make a full-frame mirrorless body? I'm going to say yes. I don't know.
Let's hope so.
I don't know. This song has been played for literally 5 years. We've been saying, when are we going to get something from Canon or Nikon? And I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think, again, with that new camera, I mean, it's Sony's like basic body. It was their first body. And what they're giving you in that camera for $2,000 is pretty incredible. I mean, it does a lot for what it is for a full frame camera. I mean, even speaking of ISO, the ISO in that camera is 204,800 all the way down to 50.
That's crazy.
And you can shoot it. I mean, I've never quite shot it that high, but I'll shoot it at 10,000, 20,000. And the noise and the structure is pretty amazing. I mean, it doesn't bother me. And again, it's funny, like back in the day when we shot film, like we liked grain, right? A little grain, for that artistic look.
Yeah.
So really, going back to even when I was talking about shooting the camera, available light at reception, sometimes if my lighting's really horrible, but I'm still trying to get like candid headshots of people during the party or things like that, single people out. If I don't love the lighting, then I'll make it black and white, and they look amazing, and my clients love it. So yeah, I mean, every camera that Sony releases, or I guess any other manufacturer, it's obviously pushing, Nikon, pushing Canon to do it. I think this is my humble opinion, I think one of the I don't want to say I guess challenge is the correct word for Canon. It's like, Canon's known as, I shot Canon before I shot Sony, and they're known as a lens company, right? And if they put out mirrorless cameras, they're going to have to change their lenses, and that's going to upset a lot of people that, I own all this glass, and now
I hear that. I've heard that argument before, but that's if every technology company is ascribed to that line of thinking, we would never have anything new, right? I mean,
right? No, I totally agree. I totally agree. But Sony did it. They started with their A mount cameras, but they weren't that deep in it, and then they switched over, and like they've been playing catch up on the glass, but now they have quite a few lenses. So it's a challenge.
Stampfly Photography, was it? Is asking about a full frame mirrorless though. So you're not really gonna, if it's full frame, you still need a 35mm image circle. So I think it's probably they wouldn't necessarily need to. They might be able to make them shorter, like the EFS lenses, because they could be closer without the need for the mirror. and that might help them to introduce some specialist lenses that are a little bit smaller, but with it being a full frame. And that's why, of course, Sony is still relatively big lenses. They've got to make that full 35 millimeter image circle.
Physics, right? Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. All right. Let's move on. The next question is from Chris Berry, who's in there. He says, what's the max shutter speed for the E shutter on the A7 III? I have no idea.
So the new camera, 10 frames a second mechanical
A7
shutter.
III. Okay, I get it. A7 III, not
Yep,
A7
10
III.
frames a second for the mechanical shutter. So it's not an electronic shutter, it's a mechanical shutter. So, you could even shoot strobe at 10 frames a second. Mm-hmm. They just released a new flash too that will keep up with that.
Very cool. All right, here we go. All right, next question is from Darren Goldstein. And what does he say? Do you guys know? Let me see. I don't understand this question. Look at the faces cleaner.
I think it's the guy who asked about the Fuji X-T2 and 5D Mark III comparison. He's just asking if we know what you mean by the tonal range.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, okay. But yeah, what does he say? Go or look at the faces, the clearer Canon. Yeah, it's. I think we understood that. It's the tonal range. Things can start to look a little bit muddy when you crank up the ISOs on smaller sensors.
Yeah. All right. Mike Smith says, what are some things you do to run through a new lens and find out what it can and can't do?
You know what? If I can jump in on that, what I actually do is I generally will take it out for initially and just run through and just doesn't really matter what I shoot, just shoot lots of stuff. Try to shoot it wide open to see if it's soft when it's wide open. If it's a zoom lens, zoom to the extremes, because that sometimes punishes a lens if you go to the extremes and it's not quite as well designed as it could be. Just shoot at extremes. So stop it right down. Also find out where diffraction starts to kick in. If you are going to, this also comes from something that I did with my app, but put a steel rule or something on a table or something where you can actually see the lines on it, and then photograph it, using a tripod, photograph it at say 45 degrees, focus on a specific point, and then just stop down, go from f2.8 or whatever, keep going to f11, f16, f22, and you'll find a point when diffraction starts to kick in. And I always just like to know where that is on my lenses. And I mean, I'm finding surprisingly that on the 5DSR and my lenses, diffraction doesn't actually really start to kick in until f22. On my older cameras, it used to seem like it was f16, but find out where diffraction kicks in as well, just so that you can make a mental note to not go past that without needing to do some sort of jiggery pokery to get it back in the, to get it sharp again. And then, there's also another thing that you can do, and I can probably provide a link to one of these for Frederick to put in the show notes, but you can also print out a chart that you pin onto the wall and photograph it, and then it will show you, it's got like the lines. You can find out how fine a line it will resolve if you really want to get geeky on it. I always do that because I'm a geek, but I use one of these charts, print it out on gloss paper so that it's really, really fine detail, and then just photograph it and see how much detail there is there. It also will show you whether it's got barrel distortion, things like that. But that was probably way too geeky an answer for you, but that's the sort of things that I do when I get a new lens.
Yeah. Well, good. I just play with mine and shoot my feet when I get sit on the couch and take pictures of my feet. You know?
If you were going to come to me, I was going to say what Martin said, because I can't top that.
Neither do I. That's why I went the other direction, because there's like talking to Martin is like talking to Don Komarechka sometimes, right? It's like people that live in the Matrix, it's crazy. All right, here's another question from Own Merch. It says, what's the most important technology feature that you would like to see the camera makers focus on moving forward?
I've got one.
I've got one too. Why don't you go first, Martin?
You guys go.
I would love to see, and I think that this is something that I have heard other people talking about, but Bluetooth connectivity or some sort of a network where I can just have my cameras talk to each other and sync their settings. You know, when I'm out and I'm working in manual mode, the light changes, and I've got a second camera around my shoulder. I've got maybe one on a tripod, and I'm forever flicking between various settings. And I would love it if I could just say, okay, this camera and this camera are together. If I change the shutter speed, change it on that camera as well. So then when I reach for the second camera, it's synced. I would love to be able to just have a screen there saying, what do you want to sync? I'd obviously want to sync ISO, shutter speed, maybe the shooting mode, things like that. But just be able to sync the, of course, aperture as well. But I'd love to be able to do that either with Bluetooth or some other sort of wireless technology that just keeps them in sync.
Yeah.
What about date and time, Martin? So here's an assignment for you tonight. I want you to stay up and do this and make this happen. Like as a wedding photographer, if I shoot with 2 people, 3 people, of course it helps when we all time sync our cameras. I'd love to have an app that would do it, multi-brand. Like literally, like we all just kind of log into it and then boom, it just, you set it to because we usually just sync to the phone. I have an iPhone, so I usually sync to that time and get close. But like an app that like would do it to the second would be awesome.
That would be great. Yeah, they just need somewhere online or something that they all connect to, just a standard. Just go up there and right. I do set my clock on my cameras. I have the GPS thing, and some of the Canons you can have them set the clock or adjust the time according to the time that's being given back by GPS satellites. Right. But I'd love it as well if we actually just had automatic the time zone stuff. You go to a new country, right. GPS picks up where you are and just set your clock
just like
according to the company. Yeah, exactly.
You land in a new place and boom, your phone gives you the correct.
Exactly. I would love that. That's a great point.
Yeah. The feature that I want is I want my cameras to be smarter, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, we're walking around with these, like this thing, right? I mean, we've got these supercomputers in these phones that can do everything. They've got processors in them that can do computational photography and all this crazy stuff. Like they're constantly connected. They can download apps. They can do all this magic stuff. How come my phone or my camera can't do that? I want my camera, and I know, Robert, are you going to say there was the Play Memories from Sony, which I think is defunct now, right? I don't know if it is or not, but I want something like that. I want an app store on my camera where I could say, I need an intervalometer to do A, B, and C, or I'm going to be doing these things. Let me go check the app store, see if there's anything there. I want that. And then obviously with that, I want a cellular modem inside my camera too, so that it can always be connected to an FTP server if I need it to. I know iFi tried to do that, but never, they hit walls trying to do that. I think we can do that now, especially with some of the things that AT&T is coming out with next year with like broadband wireless across the nation. Like these devices need to be connected all the time, especially a camera that's generating data. I want to be able to take a photo. I want to be able to put Instagram on my camera, right? And take a photo, edit it on the back of my photo, and send it, and then keep going without having to transfer it to my phone and do this. And how come I can't do it? I mean, come on, right, Robert?
Come on, the fact that you can send an image from your phone from your camera to your phone is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. I agree, but I remember 10 or 15 years ago when other things were amazing, right? So it's like the fact that you can send a text message from your phone. Come on. What else do we need? What else do we need beyond that?
Yeah, when we were kids, guys, I mean, I think if I've guessed your age right, I'm about a year older than both of you. Maybe, unless maybe 9 years younger, either a year older or 9 years younger.
Probably the other way, yeah.
Yeah. But I remember, when we were all here in Japan in 95, I went back to college. I'd been out into society. I went back to college here in Japan, and all of the kids 10 years younger than me were just starting to use what they were calling pocket bells. It was like pagers. And then, at that time, the internet's just coming in. I'm still paying, 10 yen a minute for 9,600 BPS or baud rate, whatever, modem connection, you know, and I'm going on and I'm typing in stuff. When we were kids, it was letters. I mean, geez, things have changed so much just in the last 30 years, 30, 40 years. And we could keep going back, of course. It's just been such an amazing, I think we've probably seen more advance in our lifetimes than the human race will probably see ever. Yeah, it's just things have changed so much.
Yeah, and they keep changing. I think that statement probably has been said probably every year for the last 1,000 years, right? So,
well, yeah, but I mean,
look at the wheel. How could things ever get better than this? I mean, come on, you know.
well, I mean, if you look back to the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, we've got they all of a sudden someone invents an engine, and now you've got a shaft running down a factory driving belts that can turn machines, and I mean, but these things were very incremental, and you know, electric light, the telephone, the Wright brothers, you know. I mean, in a few years' time, we're going to be talking about Bill Gates and Steve Jobs like the Wright brothers, and things are just going. Yeah, it's
Elon
definitely.
Musk,
yeah, it's that's how it is. But yeah, I mean, I think that we're moving at a much faster pace now than ever before.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of that is because smart people are building new technologies with old technologies like Lego, right? Because like DJI, for example, with the drones, they're like, hey, there's a accelerometer and a compass and all these different things that we can put together in this radio controlled aircraft and connect it wirelessly, and we have something brand new. Maybe we have a market here. Maybe people may want it, you know. So yeah, things change. Apologies to John Murch. Sorry about that. I mispronounced your name, but John had a question. He's asking, what's my favorite camera at the moment? I don't want to disrespect the camera that's shooting me, so it'll show. So that's a GH4. Panasonic Lumix GH4 is shooting me right now. But my favorite, my workhorse camera is a Panasonic Lumix GH5. Love that camera, and it typically has the 42.5 millimeter f1.2 Nocticron lens on it because I like portraits. So that camera, a battery, and that lens are typically my go-to solutions, or my that's what's in the bag that's sitting on the floor behind me anyway. So that's what I shoot. Here's another question in here. So Chris says, G Master lenses are said to resolve 100 megapixels with the A7 III. What lenses would you suggest a new Sony user consider purchasing, Robert?
You know, as a G Master lens?
I guess.
I always, so this is kind of my standard answer for that question, I think, is the 70 to the 24 to 70 2A, the G Master, because it's kind of like the most versatile lens as far as if you're going to buy one body and one lens, again, going back, like invest in the lens, you know, buy a used body even if you have to, but that's a pretty amazing lens. And if I could only shoot a wedding with one lens, that's the one I would choose because of the versatility of it. Yeah. It would allow me to shoot everything I needed that day, all in one lens. But of course, since I have other artistic lenses, you know, I might choose different ones. But I would say the 24 to 70. My current favorite lens right now, portrait wise, you know, a lot of wise, is the 51.2.
51.2, the nifty 50. Yeah, I love it. All right, guys, we ran a little bit long. Not too bad in TWiP standards, but let's wrap it up. Martin Bailey, where would you like people to go? I know we're going to do your show. We're going to record an interview with you on Friday, so we'll get a little bit deeper in some of the stuff you're working on. But until then, where should people go to see what you're working on, sign up for your workshops, etc.?
Yeah, if you go to martinbaileyphotography.com, everything's linked there. There's a menu at the top. You can get to pretty much everything that I'm up to. There's all of the social networks. If you go to any of the blog pages, the social networks are all linked on the right there as well.
Cool. And the Photographer's Friend is linked from there as well?
Yeah, well, if you go to mbp.ac/app, that'll take you to my website, which tells you all about it. And then there's a link to it in the App Store as well. Apple changed it, I'm sure everyone knows, but a few months ago they changed it so that you can't buy apps on a computer now. You have to do it on the phone or the iPad. So, but the links are in there. So that's mbp.ac/app.
Awesome. All right, Robert Evans, what about you, man? Where should people go to either hire you or follow you otherwise?
Pretty much, again, my name, robertevans.com is my website. My Twitter and my Instagram are at Robert Evans. Facebook, my business page is Robert Evans Studios. So you can find me at those places. If you want to go, you can also go on the Alpha Universe site for my Sony fans that are listening. It's a great resource with a ton of information and a ton of stuff to look at. But I do have a little bio there and some images also on Alpha Universe under Artisans.
Cool. All right. And I'll put all of your links, both of you guys, in the description for this video, as well as in the show notes on thisweekinphoto.com, which reminds me to tell folks to go to This Week in Photo. Make sure you go to thisweekinphoto.com to check out all the shows that we have available there, as well as check out TWiPPro.com. That's TWiP PRO.com. That's our brand new TWiP community. It's Slack-based, and it is vibrant. Thanks to all the folks that joined us in the chat. I feel good that a lot of the TWiP Pro people came out to hang out and talk to me, and I just lost the light, so that's telling me that it's literally, it is quite literally time to take that lens cap off. So thanks, guys. Thanks to both of you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Now that TWiP is cranked up again and we're running on all cylinders, I hope you both will come back on the show again and
absolutely
and chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool. All right, thanks, guys. Listeners, we'll see you next time. It's time to take that lens cap off. This is TWiP.